Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Aardvark Accessibility Podcast. My name is Natalie G, and with me today is.
Natalie MacLeese.
Yes, thank you for joining us today, Natalie.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, this is the 12th episode, and in this podcast episode, we're going to talk about WCAG's cousins. Less talked about cousins. They are ATAG, UAAG, and Pudafua.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those are the official names.
Yes, we're going to go
The
over each one.
the other accessibility guidelines.
Yes, the not so mentioned, often forgotten, but they're here, and we're going to talk about them. All right,
Yes.
Natalie, what is WCAG? Just a refresher for our audience.
WCAG, WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and it's what applies to any kind of online content or software, even though the name is web content. So, like online web apps and things like that, it also applies.
Yes, and I feel like if you put any attention into the accessibility space, that's all you hear. WCAG this, WCAG that.
Yes. You do hear it a lot. People talk about WCAG a lot, and they don't talk about its cousins.
Mm-mm. What are the cousins, Natalie? We want to start with ATAG.
I usually say ATAG, but okay, we can call it whatever you want. ATAG, the Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines. You'll notice they all end in AG because they're all accessibility guidelines. And this is a set of guidelines meant for authoring tools. So things like your favorite CMS, whether that's Drupal, WordPress, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, etc., etc. There's literally hundreds of them at this point. And ATAG should be applying to all of these things. Unfortunately, it is not very evenly implemented. And ATAG aims to do two things with an authoring tool. Number one, it aims to try to make sure that people with disabilities can use the tool. And so in that way, it's all of the WCAG rules just applied to, the admin editing interface of, WordPress or whatever, to make sure that if you're using a screen reader or your keyboard only or, whatever kind of assistive technology you're using, you can go in and write blog posts and add images and all of those kinds of things.
Mhm.
The other part of ATAG is to help you as an author make sure that your content that you're creating is accessible. And so it should have little tips and little warnings that show up if you try to put white text on a pale yellow background. You should see some kind of warning come up that just says, oh, hey, you might want to pick a different color here. This isn't accessible. It should have little reminders. Oh, hey, maybe you want to add alt text to this image, right? It should help you. It should help guide you through because we just can't expect with the like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people who are creating content on the web. It's not fair to expect that they're going to be aware of all of the WCAG guidelines and know how they're doing that. And so these tools should be guiding people through creating content in that accessible way.
Right, yeah. When I was doing research for this, I didn't realize how many other tools also fall into this category, right? It's anything
Yeah.
where you're technically the author and making content. So that's like Canva, that could be like the Adobe suite. What else did I have? Grammarly, Notion.
There's so many ways to make content on the web these days. Any social media platform really is letting you author content. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Reddit? We looked at Reddit earlier.
Yeah. We discovered Reddit used to let you go wild, I guess, when you were the host of a subreddit. I don't
Hmm.
know, creator of a subreddit. You could set all kinds of typefaces and you could change all the colors. And that seems to have definitely gone away or at least been way toned down, because we looked at a couple of examples on the old Reddit or classic Reddit that were definitely not accessible.
Mm-mm. Yeah, so in a sense, it is an authoring tool, Reddit.
Sure. Yeah, people go in there, they create content. Yep. They
Mhm.
post, not just text, but they post pictures and videos, and sure.
Yeah, I liked your example too about gravity forms.
Yeah. So Gravity Forms recently did a lot of work to make their tool accessible. Gravity Forms is a plugin for WordPress that lets you create custom forms. And it implemented some of the ATAG guidelines. So when you're editing a form, if you try to make a choice like hiding the labels for your form fields or trying to include a multi-select, it will warn you and let you know that's not accessible. Maybe you want to try a different approach to what you're doing.
Yeah. So that's an example of authoring tool within another authoring tool.
Yeah, that's true.
There's multiple
Yeah.
levels.
And some of that's been built into WordPress too, because I know if you're in the block editor and you try to put, a light colored background with white text, you will see a warning that will let you know, hey, maybe you should make one of these colors darker, because this isn't going to be enough contrast. So it's not that it's not implemented at all. It's just implemented very unevenly and not fully, unfortunately. And so that makes it harder for, people who are coming on the web who have no background in coding. They don't know HTML, they don't know CSS, but they start a blog or they get really active posting on social media or whatever it is. And they don't know. And that's not something we should expect them to know, but we should expect the tools to guide them through and help them to make better choices.
Yeah. I would like to see heading tips implemented in WordPress
Yes.
because you can go
Yeah.
crazy with those headings if you really wanted to.
Yeah. And a lot of tools I think you and I had come across is in an email tool that we were using recently that made it very easy to make text large and bold, but actually made it kind of difficult to figure out how to make it an actual heading and not just big bold text.
Yeah. Or even that other form tool we were looking at who told us to just add paragraph as a label for a field. They didn't have the option to add an
Yeah,
actual
they didn't
label.
even have the option to have labels for form fields. Yes, that's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a failure on the authoring tool.
That is definitely a failure on the authoring tool, which leads to then a WCAG failure on the front end of the site when users are coming to it. Yeah.
hmm It trickles down, you guys. Trickles down. It goes wrong somewhere up above and it comes down.
We should demand better authoring tools.
Yeah, I was telling Natalie, I've been thinking about this, and since I read about ATAG or ATAG, I feel like the authoring tools should be held more responsible. Because
Yeah,
to me, it seems like you're trying to fight the symptoms instead of fighting the actual disease here.
yes, and any improvements that we make to an authoring tool, right, then trickle out to the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people who use that platform.
hmm Yeah. It's just like how the social media platforms recently added alt text fields for images. I feel like that was a more recent development.
It was definitely an afterthought, unfortunately, for most of them. Yes.
Yeah, or even Reddit, right? Just now they're redesigning 10 years, 15 years later.
Yeah. Way after the fact. Way too late. Way too late after way too much content is already created and is now hanging around, hanging
Mm,
out there, just being inaccessible.
yep. All right. Do you want to talk about the next cousin?
Yeah. What are you calling it?
Let's go into UAAG.
Blog. User agent. So there's two A's. User agent accessibility guidelines, UAAG. And I don't know, for all I know, people do call it UAAG. I've never heard anyone talk about it. So that's that's how tragic things are. And so this is, browsers mostly, but also media players, and ensuring that those are accessible, that they are integrated fully with the accessibility API, that if I'm using any particular browser, it's going to work with my screen reader, or it's going to work with my screen magnifier, or, whatever assistive technology I happen to be using. So these obviously have a pretty huge impact on users because, when we look at the number of products that are impacted by WCAG, it's billions of them, right? And things impacted by ATAG, it would probably be in the millions by now if we look at all of the social media platforms and all of the web authoring tools and all of the other ways that you can put content online. There's probably millions of them. And then when we get to user agents, there's less than 100 probably that are in common use. I mean, there's probably way more than that, but like if you ask somebody what browser they use, there's like a 99% chance it's one of like five, right? So
Yeah.
it's not going to be some wild extra choice. So it's a very small number. And so the impact here of implementing accessibility correctly is even bigger because we're going to have millions and millions of users of every single one of these tools.
Hmm. Do you think user agent also applies to operating systems? Or is that a different set of guidelines maybe I didn't find?
I don't actually know if there is explicitly a set of guidelines that apply to operating systems.
Hmm.
That's a good question that we could look into.
Yeah. Because, like I said, I just got a new iPhone update, and they introduced a bunch of accessibility features, and they're honestly pretty similar to like what Chrome would offer.
Sure.
Hmm. Also, in my
Yeah.
research, it seems like UAG is actually more commonly implemented than you would think, right? Like Chrome, Firefox, Safari.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. The user agents do tend to do a pretty good job. They aren't super even, which is why we end up with situations where if you want to use VoiceOver as your screen reader, for example, pretty much you have to use Safari because that's where it's going to work best. If you want to use JAWS, you have to use Edge as your browser. And if you want to use NVDA, you're kind of stuck with Firefox. And it's not that those screen readers won't work with other browsers, it's just that they work so much better with the one that they are kind of paired up with. And there's no, like, as far as I'm aware, there's no like official relationship. I mean, obviously, except VoiceOver and Safari, but like for NVDA and Firefox and JAWS and Edge, like there's no official relationship between those. It's just kind of where the developers of those tools have focused their time.
Yeah, because you can't fix every browser as a screen reader, right?
Right. Yeah. Every browser's got its little quirks and its little shortcomings, and then the screen readers have to figure out how they're going to deal with that. Yeah.
Mhm. I guess they each just decided to capture their own little share of the market in browsers,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, they have limited time and resources, so they're going to focus in, if you can make one thing really well, then that's better than to try to do five things not very well. And especially when you're talking about something like a screen reader, the people who are using a screen reader are very dependent on that. And so it's very important that it works really well. And so you definitely would want to focus on, well, let's just do this one thing and do it really well, especially because the user agents are all free. You don't pay for Chrome or Firefox or Arc browser or Safari or Edge, right? Like they're all free. You just go online and you download them. So there's not really a bit, there's not a cost barrier there. You can use whichever one you want.
Let's talk about the next cousin, Putafua.
My favorite name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
After the show, we're gonna share a Putuf with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to share a downloadable PDF. Oh, a PDF UA, which this one gets an extra U in there and no G.
Mm-mm.
So PDF. Oh, do you know what PDF stands for?
Printable. Printable. No?
No.
Are you sure?
Portable. Yeah.
Portable. I thought it meant something like printable ready.
No. Portable document format is PDF.
Interesting. I don't
Yeah.
believe that. I'm gonna see if there's another acronym.
All right. So I can't talk over your clacky keyboard.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. It does mean portable document formats. What the heck?
My secret hidden talent is I'm really, really good at internet acronyms.
Yeah, you kind of have to be if you're gonna be in accessibility.
I know what they all stand for.
Okay, put-offs.
All right.
Continue.
Portable document format, universal accessibility. So, WCAG applies to PDFs, as you discovered when you were looking into this topic for the podcast. But then there's some extra PDF specific things that you have to do to make sure that PDFs are accessible. There's document tagging and reading order and things like that that you can modify in Acrobat and other PDF editing tools to ensure that your PDFs are accessible. But to be honest with you, if you have some content and you really want it to be accessible, make it HTML. PDFs are pretty problematic most of the time
Hmm.
from an accessibility standpoint.
What reasons would you need a PDF then? Just like if you want to share like a flyer, like a printable flyer.
Yeah, people like them to have something that's printable, right? Like, oh, download my printable planner for whatever. So they like to have it for that. And then, of course, at least in the US, I think this might be true in other countries as well, the government just loves a PDF. They just, any government website has, I don't know, a library of tens of thousands of PDFs. Everything's a PDF instead of just being like a blog post. I don't know why. There must be something about their like internal approval process or something that goes more smoothly when things are a PDF.
Yeah, right now it's tax season. There are so many ridiculous, stupid PDFs from the government. Don't get me started.
Yeah. It does make for like one advantage of a PDF over a web page if it is something that you are going to try to print is you can get a more consistently nice looking, nicely laid out result from a PDF instead of a web page. That is, that is something that we can't overlook. It does have that advantage to it, but it is really tough to make a PDF truly accessible. And it's a whole, in fact, document accessibility is a whole separate specialty branch of accessibility professional. Document accessibility specialists, that's all they do is work on things like PDFs, Word files, Excel files, PowerPoint files, things like that, and make them accessible. It is like, I can't do that. I've tried. It's terrible. You need like a PhD in PDFs.
Yeah, because there's some pretty fancy PDFs out there where like you can tap through the field, fill them out, check boxes, signatures.
Yeah, they get pretty fancy and it's really rough. It's really hard. The tools are not great.
Mhm. But see, like we're website people, right?
Right.
If you just put a form on your site. I don't get why we need a PDF for it. That's how I think. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just put the form online. So much easier. And there's so many lovely, fully accessible online form solutions.
Thank you. Yes. Put up a while. You're, you're like the third cousin removed. That's why you don't have a G in your name. You have a different. You came from the other side of the family.
But Duff was from the wrong side of the tracks.
They're from the dad side. Any last remarks about pedophile, Natalie, or UAAG, or ATAG?
No, I will say I was speaking at a conference one time, and I was talking to an audience of people who were building an authoring tool. And I started talking about WCAG, and everybody was like, yeah, we've heard all this before. And I was like, okay, well, what about ATAG? Who's heard of ATAG? A room with maybe like 300 people in it. Not one person raised their hand. Not one person had heard of ATAG. And they were all building an authoring tool.
Wow. Is it okay? I have some questions actually.
Okay.
I guess I didn't research this as deep as I should have. Does ATAG and UAAG have success criterion just like WCAG and techniques that link to them?
I don't actually know.
Okay. I wonder if it's like the same thing, like a little directory of success criterion. They link out to techniques and failures.
Yeah, we could definitely put links to them in the show notes and people can go explore them for themselves.
Yeah.
But now that you know that these exist, if you're using an authoring tool that's not helping you make accessible content, you should file a support ticket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like we should hold authoring tools more responsible. I feel like we crack down a lot on web content, but like a
Yeah.
lot of people just don't really know. Like there's
No.
millions and billions of people out there like making WordPress sites.
Yeah. And it's
Like,
a lot. It's a lot to put on them to say you have to know how to do all these things to have a website. That's a pretty difficult thing to demand of people who are not technical. And a lot of WCAG is pretty technical, right? And if you're not technical and you don't know code, it's not very fair to expect that you're going to be able to produce accessible content. But if your authoring tool helps you do it, there's no reason why you couldn't.
yeah. It's just like a form building tool, right? Like if you let people make inaccessible fields, I mean, that's not the person's fault. They just bought your form plugin. I don't know.
Yeah, they're just using the settings that you made available in your tool, right? But your tool could limit people's choices. And I do think that that plays into it a little bit is that these tools are a little bit afraid that they're going to lose users or that users are going to get upset or frustrated that they can't, that they can't make a pale yellow background with a white text on it, right? They're going to be mad. Well, I want to do this. Why aren't you letting me do this? And I think they're a little bit afraid that they're going to get some blowback from their users who say, "No, I should be able to make inaccessible content if I want to."
I mean, I want to go 90 on a 60-mile-per-hour road. What? What? I don't know what to tell you. Don't put my background.
I want to go to the store and just take what I want.
It's just I want to go get a new flat screen and walk out with it. That's too dang bad. You can't put yellow on white. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. That's my opinion.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think if ATAG were more robustly implemented across all the different authoring tools that are out there, we would see a lot of improvement in general web content accessibility across the web. Yeah,
It trickles down. File
it
support
does.
ticket.
File support tickets. I've always been a fan of filing support tickets for inaccessible things.
Yeah. I guess what would you do if they respond and they're like, "Sorry, it's not a priority for us."
Well, if I had the option, I would probably look for another tool that would take it more seriously. That's not always an option. So you can always write back to them and say, can you please escalate my, my request, because here's the reasons that it's important. You're not necessarily going to get anywhere, but if you don't do it, you're not going to get anywhere at all, ever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think if we all started being more proactive about demanding accessibility from the tools that we use, the companies implementing those tools would have to start accommodating all of us.
Yeah. Because I feel like the bigger companies, they have the budget.
Sure.
Like, I feel like cracking down on the small business who just has like a little WordPress site, doesn't really know any better. You can crack down on the bigger company. Why'd you let them put light yellow on white background?
Without even so much as warning them, right? Or why'd you let them put 100 images up without telling them they should add alt text to it? Because
Yeah.
how else were they going to know? How else were they going to find out that that was something they should be doing?
I think little warnings, at least to help people understand, is
Mm-hmm.
one step. One step.
It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, but enforcing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is mostly up to the marketplace to enforce something like that, and to just say, listen, your tool's not, it doesn't help my users. I've got this big company with 100 people writing blog posts, and I want them to all make sure they're accessible. And if your tool doesn't help them do that, I'm not going to use it.
I guess it's kind of a case of you pay with your dollars.
Yeah, you vote with your
Vote
dollars.
with your dollars. You don't put your eggs in one basket.
Are we just saying sayings now?
How the turntables. Okay, we're getting too carried away. We need to end the podcast.
All right.
Why does WCAG get all the attention, Natalie? Do you want to go over that really quick and then we can wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally the number of websites and web apps that WCAG applies to is, maybe billions, right? But at least hundreds of millions. And so it's just a much bigger area. And when we look at authoring tools, that's a much smaller subset, right? There's probably like one authoring tool for every several thousand or, websites. And then when you get to user agent, that's even smaller, right? There's even a tiny number of user agents that everyone in the world is using, just these handful of different user agents. So I think that's mainly what it is that it's just the number of things that it applies to is the difference between, billions versus maybe tens of thousands versus literally like 10, right? Like user agents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a TOG is like the middle child, right?
It is
Forgotten.
the middle child, the forgotten middle child.
Yeah. Like UAAG. Like you have a few browsers, all eyes are on them. They're the first
Yeah.
child. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last child, WCAG.
That's the baby of the family.
Yeah.
What's Pudafua?
Profa is the uncle.
The uncle that lives in his van.
Smells
The uncle
questionable.
from Napoleon Dynamite.
Like, I could throw a football over those mountains right there. Coach would have put me in fourth quarter. Yeah, let's put up one.
All right.
We're getting carried away again.
We're getting carried away again. I gotta go. I got another meeting.
The drama with these cousins, it's too much.
It's all this family drama.
Yeah, it's a family drama. We're getting too carried away. Okay. Let's wrap up the podcast.
All right. I think we have to say something to wrap up the
Yes.
podcast.
Okay, so with all that said, you guys, those are WCAG's cousins. Much less known, but now you know they exist. So reach out to your authoring tools if you spot any accessibility issues or anything that could help you make your content more accessible. Send them messages, move them, shake them,
Vote
and
with
then
your dollars.
vote with your dollars. Let the turntables. We met UAAG, the other cousin for user agents, so browsers, maybe operating systems, not confirmed. And then we met Pudafua, the weird uncle, who is used in conjunction with WCAG, but there's extra accessibility guidelines just for PDFs.
You might need to say that again.
What was it? Oh yeah. And we met Pudafua, the weird uncle, who is used in conjunction with WCAG, but there's also additional guidelines just for PDFs. They're very finicky. So with that said, thank you for joining us for the 12th Aardvark Accessibility Podcast. Natalie, do you have any last words? Where could we learn more about WCAG?
Yeah, if you want to test out your homepage for free, you can come to aardvarkaccessibility.com, find out all the WCAG success criteria that you might have failures of on your homepage. And Aardvark now has a PDF remediation available as a service. So if that's something you're interested in, get in touch.
Yes. $10 a page.
$10 a page.
So with all that said, thank you guys for joining us. For all our YouTube subscribers, we now are going into the portion of the video where we quickly get our thumbnails. And in the spirit of Valentine's Day, we're going to do a heart pose.
You get extra hearts. My laptop is too old.
Heart. Not this abomination. Right?
No, that's painful. I think that must be bad for your joints.
Or this abomination.
Yeah, that's just awkward. You gotta have your elbows up. This is the cutest one.
So thank you guys, and that's about it.